WD18, the Watford fans channel, here for another match preview. This time the Golden Boys are back at Vicarage Road on Saturday to take on Coventry City in a 3 o'clock kickoff. Before we go on and talk about that game in more detail, let's have a bit of a recap regarding our fantastic game in midweek, a 3-2 win against Stoke City. That win being sealed by a 93rd minute winner from Ismail Assar. Absolute scenes, of course, in a game that we sadly all heard about, but very few of us actually saw, of course, with the very unfortunate Hive Live going down for the entirety, pretty much the entirety of the game, really. Really disappointing, but just as a quick side note, all the highlights and all the analysis are all up already on the YouTube channel, so if you've not yet seen the goals, or you've kind of not sure as to how to get hold of them, head over to the Watford FC YouTube page, and all the highlights are all there. And you're going to want to see them as well, because it really was a bit of a topsy-turvy kind of game, really. Both sides contributed to what was a fantastic game in the end. Defensively, though, from our perspective, still a bit of a letdown to concede that first goal from a set piece as well. Stephen Fletcher as well, a guy who I earmarked as a big threat for Stoke, coming up trumps for them. And then, of course, for their second goal, the ball being hoofed forward and, you know, those guys winning the flick-ons as you'd expect Stoke City to do, and Nick Powell with a very good finish for them. But we rolled back into the game, of course, the very controversial goal by Tom Cleverley, which actually should never have stood. As João Pedro did bundle over Angus Gunn over the line, as Cleverley's initial shot wasn't actually over the line. It bounced actually on the line, didn't actually go over. Pedro, though, took his big chance of the evening in the form of a penalty to put us 2-1 up. Stoke then, of course, equalised. And then the winning goal, and whilst Ismail Assar will take all the plaudits for scoring it, a huge round of applause and a massive, massive shout out has to go to Ken Summer. Exquisite wing play on the left-hand side, whipping that ball in there as well. And we always look quite dangerous towards the latter ends of the game. And ultimately, look, we didn't play particularly well. There's still a few concerns defensively, but 3 points and 2 massive goals for João Pedro and Ismail Assar. It's only going to help their confidence. It's only going to help Ken Sema's confidence as well, the fact that he's playing so well at the moment. We'll move on to talk about some of the team news coming up for this Saturday, and it's Vladimir Ivic's understanding that he'd quite like Will Hughes to start. It's obviously one thing, but he is in contention to start the game. Of course, he came on as a late substitute against Stoke in midweek. He actually replaced Chalobah. For me, I'd love to see Hughes start. I still feel like our strongest midfield for me are the ones that I think that kind of made the biggest impact was, for me, Capoue, Hughes and Tom Dele-Bashiru. Unfortunately, Tom is out injured and we missed him, of course, the speediest of recoveries, and we're going to be without him for what looks like the majority of this season. And so for me, maybe that third person in there is maybe Domingos Quina, but the last games or so that he played, he wasn't really looking up for it. I've got high hopes, though, for James Garner, and I really want to see him start more often, because he looks a hell of a player, and, you know, let's hope that midfield area kind of gets sorted. You know, I know the lack of pre-season I don't think has helped those three, especially with someone like Etienne Capoue as well, who was, you know, very 50-50 as whether or not he was going to even stay at the club. The only guy in that midfield that's actually trained throughout and has trained thoroughly, I think, has probably been Will Hughes. Of course, there are Cleverley and Chalobah as well, but if those guys are not playing well, you know, you've got to ask the question, and I will be asking a bit of a question, or will be a bit of an odd. It will be slightly odd if they are starting, given that they've not played particularly well in the last few matches. But, you know, the squad is kind of getting back to normal now. Ivic is pleased the likes of Andre Gray and Troy Deeney are back. They can start being reintegrated with the squad, and more importantly with Ivic's plans as well for the season, which is of course the big reason as to why they are actually here. They are here to play a part this season, and I think both those players will get the chance to impress and will get the chance to start throughout the season. The last bit of team news, of course, from our perspective, is that Isaac's success is due back in the middle of January, and Ivic hopes that he'll be fully involved. And Adam Messina will be back in February as well, having suffered a bit of a setback with his Achilles injury. Again, disappointing, and it would be interesting to see if we do go and get ourselves a free agent left back to kind of fill in that role. It doesn't look like that right now, and it still looks like we're going to be sticking with a 5-3-2 formation, which I know has divided fans, and it's, you know, it's not my favoured formation. I don't think it's Ivic's favoured formation, if that's any consolation. So, you know, we're doing the very best we can at the moment, and victories like Stoke in midweek are only going to help get us back up the table. And ultimately, look, we guys, you know, we're 4 points off the top, and we're doing incredibly well at the moment, given that we've not had a fully fit squad to choose from. And now let's talk a little bit about our opponents on Saturday, and they are, of course, Coventry City, a side that were promoted from League One, of course, to the Championship. They've had a bit of a tough start to the season. Of course, I think that the biggest standout result has been beating Reading in their adopted home, of course, of St Andrews. They suffered a bit of a tough one as well in midweek. The last game week, of course, they lost 2-1 away from home against Nottingham Forest. Lyle Taylor, 97th minute penalty, seemed a bit harsh actually, having initially seen the challenge that went in there, and Coventry I think will feel really hard done by. In regards, of course, to them, they've got three major bits of team news, three big players out for them as well. Dom Hyam, Jordan Shipley and Fantaki Dabo will all be missing the game on Saturday due to various injuries. The big question mark though for them is their big man up top, Matt Godden, and a guy who I earmarked as being a big threat for them as well. He did hobble off against Nottingham Forest in midweek. The Coventry manager, Mark Robbins, I think that's his name, yes it is, Mark Robbins, just have to check, isn't actually sure yet and is going to be checking in on that injury in the run-up to the match. So it's kind of slightly poker face maybe in that respect, maybe trying to keep Vladimir and the lads guessing, I'm guessing. But look, ultimately, even if Godden doesn't make the game in time, it'll still be a very tough game for us. You know, Coventry, a bit like Wycombe, as I say, recently promoted. Wycombe went for it when we played them at Adams Park. They had nothing to lose, and you know, on another night they should have taken 3 points. We don't want to have another repeat scenario of that game at Vicarage Road, and it's so imperative that we build upon the midweek wins. The win, as I say, against Stoke was so hard fought. Some would say undeserved, actually, but it is those kind of results. It's those gritty kind of performances. As I think the commentator on the highlights on Quest actually said Watford have won 4 of the first 5 home games, and the last time they did that, they actually got promoted. And that was, of course, referring to the promotion season of the 14-15 year, and it's crucial that we just keep on building. Coventry will be very tough, and they'll line up, I would imagine, relatively defensively. They'll try and do a Wycombe. They'll try and nick something as and when they can. But Coventry have shown this season that they're no slacks. And a side that goes off and beats Reading, who have been in incredible form this season, you know, fair play to them. And we've discovered this season certain teams. I look at Stoke, for example. Obviously, we have Reading, Barnsley as well last Saturday, which wasn't a very good performance, if we're being honest. We found those sides very difficult to break down, and there's almost an argument to be like, well, you know, you're going to kind of get those kind of games in the Championship, and that's absolutely fine. But when you're on top, we've got to take advantage. We've got to start well in these games, and I just hope we can do so. It does sound like it sounds almost as if we're kind of expecting something to happen here on Saturday. I just want to see a good performance. I just want to see 11 players go out onto the pitch, give it the very best they can. Because ultimately, like we kept on saying in the Premier League, there's no such thing as an easy game. There's no such thing as a must-win or an easy game. Sorry, there's no such thing as an easy game in the Championship, and I think we'll definitely feel it on Saturday. Ultimately, I trust Vladimir Ivic and the lads to go out there and put in a great performance. And I also just want to end on this final point as well. You know, we need to give Vladimir Ivic time. There have been a lot of calls in the last couple of weeks for him to leave. I think those are absolutely ludicrous and actually quite funny, really, because he's not had a fully fit squad. We're not firing on all levels just yet. You know, let's just buy our time a little bit. Let's see what happens. But Saturday, home against Coventry. I wish we were going, and I wish we were there in midweek as well. I think that makes such a big difference. But ultimately, got to get the better of the teams at home. And if we win most of our home games this season, well, we'll be looking in pretty good nick. That's all for now. Come on, you all.